Welcome to another episode of Earth is Our Home with Dr. Tom Blaine. Dr. Tom Blaine is an associate professor with the Ohio State University Extension program. And today we're going to be talking about skepticism versus cynicism. So stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of Earth is Our Home with Dr. Thomas Blaine. Dr. Thomas Blaine is an associate professor with the Ohio State University Extension program. Tom, it's always a pleasure talking with you.
It's a pleasure for me to be on here, Patrick, and I want to thank OSU South Centers for having me. I'm enjoying the series quite a bit. I hope that it's very informative to the viewers.
You've been a associate professor with the Ohio State University Extension program for how long, Tom?
Well, I came in as assistant professor in 95, and in 2000, I was promoted to associate. So I've been employed by OSU Extension for 26 years, 26 and a half, really. I've been at the rank of associate professor now for 20 years.
And I know that, in the last 10 or 11 segments, you've been providing a variety of different useful information, useful tools for us to understand the Earth as a whole.
It's important to me that people understand basic climate, basic meteorology before we launch deeply into climate change, global warming, especially how this is being influenced by humans, because the lessons on how the climate works, I think, are really prerequisites for understanding how this system will work under the changes that humans are inducing. So that's why I've done that. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from people that they've enjoyed learning basic climate. The stuff we've done hasn't been very controversial so far. It's basic climate science. And so I've definitely enjoyed it, but I'm ready to get into some of the tougher stuff now on how humans are affecting the climate.
I've listened and I really respect all the information that you have. You are a very learned scholar when it comes to understanding the Earth and helping us to understand it. But I'll be quite frank with you. The direness of climate change, I'm finding is very, very difficult to really put in perspective. So permit me to sort of go through a few of my slides to tell you why I'm a cynic. Number one, Earth has been around for 4.6 billion years, but our humankind has only been for 2 million. Our recorded history, somewhere around 6,000 years. At an average lifespan for us individuals, it ranges anywhere from 72 to 78 years. So the point that I'm getting here is that the Earth has been around for 4.6 billion years, and we are just a little spot in the time of the Earth. The Earth has seen a lot of catastrophes, and let's face it, the Earth has seen many cultures, and many cultures have grown and died. They range anywhere from Babylonians to different early periods to our current periods. It was about 200, 300 years ago where certain countries weren't found or weren't prevalent. In the last 6,000 years, there has been a lot of strife and turmoil. We've had 6,000 years of wars, 6,000 years of pure poverty, 6,000 years of disease and Earth history disasters, and all of us have died or will die. And it seems that in that particular case, those 6,000 years, the question has been, have we gotten any better? No, I don't know. Our cultures are vastly different. First of all, the food that I eat, other individuals in another part of the world may find it difficult for them to eat. And likewise for me, there's certain kinds of foods other people eat are very foreign to me. Our working schedule, Tom, we in the United States have the right to work at times that, well, let's take for you instance, you work all night long on your educational programs, and you have the freedom and the right to do that. Where in other parts of the world, other cultures, some don't. You come in, you clock in, you go out, and the third point is money, and it does not mean the types of bills or currencies, but the money we earn. We live in a very wealthy society, Tom. Money-wise, many of us have the opportunity to make as much money as we possibly can. Some don't, but for the most part, many of us do. And with money comes leisure time. And we have an exorbitant amount of leisure time that our forefathers did not necessarily have. Poverty in the United States and in our countries like the United States are very, very different than the poverty that we see in other parts of the world. I don't know what the statistics are or how many people have died or how many have lived, but let's face it, is it safe to say 1 million people have died of starvation in a year's time? I don't know if that's too many or not enough, but there are a fourth of the people that go to bed hungry. Whereas in our society, poverty is a little bit different. We have agencies and organizations that are willing to help out. And if somebody really goes hungry, they don't go hungry for a long. Let's look at our throwaway societies. We throw stuff away that we've used and it no longer works. In some societies, people are throwaways. If you reach a certain age, if you're a certain gender, they are considered throwaway cast members, don't need them anymore. And the seventh thing that I wanted to point out is that treatment of pets. Do you know that we have in our country different cans of food, fancy feast? Give your cat or give your dog these excellent treats. We tend to treat our pets better than we do people on other parts of the world. And is that good or bad? I don't know, but I'm getting to my point. We've had a lot of progress, especially for 70 years. Tom, I've lived for 70 years and I've seen many different things. I've seen new technologies. We were talking not too long ago. When I was 7 years old, we had a TV, 3 channels. Now we have 1,000. We have new medicines. In the last 70 years, we've been working on desegregation. We've been learning how to treat people much, much better, but it's been more than just last year or the year before. 70 years that we've been at least doing that. We've acquired new fuel sources. We've seen new environmental changes, and we've been addressing for the last 70 years climate change. But with the new technology, we have seen other problems occur. The electric companies are switching from coal to natural gas. That's good. Oh, the only problem is we get most of our natural gas from fracking. And is that good to substitute one fossil fuel for another that we're putting in dirty water into the land. I don't know. The wind turbines kills birds. With the increase in our agricultural production, et cetera, we've had to use different pesticides and HGMOs and things of that nature. The electric cars need electricity. And the point that I'm getting at there is the fact that we're exchanging carbon fuel for another source of energy, and how that's generated is through carbon fuel. And then finally, solar panels available, but they are expensive. We have been inundated in the last 50 years with different conspiracy theories. You know, I'm not going to list all of them. I just listed a few, such as the communists have been poisoning our water supply. 9/11 was an inside job. The Illuminati is not a secret society. It's our government. Towers control our weather. Chemtrails from jets are poisoning our lives. AIDS is a bioweapon. Good and bad aliens are running our government. Snapple is owned by the KKK. And there's many, many more. And so it comes down to skepticism versus cynicism. Cynicism is an inclination to believe that people are motivated purely by self-interest. And skeptical attitude primarily doubts about the truth of something. Here is where my cynicism starts to come in. When I think about all the different things, we live in a selling, marketing world. And I truly believe most people have ulterior motives. And I believe that people do things that make them feel good. And people make money on controversy. And the media is bias and the media is prejudice. And it depends upon what we have, about 50 to 60 different media stations. And everyone says that they're fair and balanced. But we know that that's not the case. Some are biased to here, some are prejudiced against that. And in our last 10 years, we've seen you're either right or you're wrong. The point that I'm getting at is in my 70 years, we have gone through 5 major calamities. In the 50s and 60s, 1950s and 60s, it was determined that we would all die from nuclear holocausts. In the 1990s, there was a Y2K computer date problem. We knew that airplanes were going to fall out of the sky. In the 2000s, we've had world terrorism, where weapons of mass destruction are going to kill us all. And in 2020, we've had global climate change. And the point that I'm getting at is that we have survived all of those different things. We have met those challenges, and we have done our very best to work through them. That's why I'm a cynic, Tom, is the fact that we may have problems with global climate change. But on the same token, the world is not going to come to an end. We will all die, but the world won't necessarily come to an end. And so trying to put things in perspective and things of that nature, I think most individuals, when they hear global change and climate change, all that information that I just gave to you sort of is their base.
I see. Yeah, you're making a good point that if I could sum it up, what I'm taking from this, the world, humans have faced upheavals before, tremendous upheavals, existential crises, a crisis like you mentioned, the nuclear crises in the 60s and 70s, that was the Cold War. Fortunately, the nukes between the Soviet Union and the United States were never fired in anger. We had that threat hanging over us, and it was very much an existential threat. And a lot of people believed that, we were doomed because of that. And at times it looked like we were. Humans have, you're right, throughout our history, faced existential crises. There's no question about that. And yet you make the point that our living standard today is higher than it's ever been. That's a great point. The world starvation statistics that we saw, that you mentioned, there's less starvation. There are fewer people going hungry today than there were 50 years ago or 70 years ago at the time of your childhood. Yes, that's true. We've made enormous gains. The living standard of human beings is at an all-time high. I absolutely agree with that. There's no doubt in my mind. Now, as far as I don't want to sound like an alarmist, and I don't believe I am an alarmist, but as you pointed out, also some of those calamities throughout Earth's history have ended in mass extinctions. The greatest mass extinction of all time was 252 million years ago. Quite a long time ago, the Permian extinction. People can Google that with the Great Dying or the Permian extinction, which temperatures on planet Earth soared over several 100,000 years, and it killed about 85 to 90% of all the species on the planet. It almost wiped out all life forms on the planet. But you're right, life on Earth survived. Those 15% or so of species survived, repopulated the Earth. In fact, if that hadn't happened, the Earth would be quite a different place than it is today. The dinosaurs never would have come on because that killed the larger animals at the time, which were not dinosaurs. The ancestors of the dinosaurs were small, didn't eat a whole lot, and it kind of cleared the way for them to come on. And then an extinction event 65 million years ago killed off all the dinosaurs and let our ancestors, which were little furry animals that didn't eat a whole lot and didn't need a lot of sunlight, it allowed them to come on. And we have evolved into primates who actually can understand how the universe works. We've achieved a level of consciousness unthinkable. So I just want you to know that when I say we are running an enormous risk on global warming, I'm not saying the Earth is going to come to an end. The Earth will not come to an end because of global warming. But species of all kinds may come to an end. In fact, it's the manifest destiny for every species on the planet to face extinction at some point. And that includes Homo sapiens, us. So, yeah, the Earth will continue, but it may continue in quite a different form. When I talk about what's happening to global temperatures, we're looking at a trajectory on carbon dioxide concentrations, where we've already got a higher level of concentrations of CO2 than we've had in the past 7-8 million years. You mentioned humans or human-like animals had been around for 2 million years. Well, we've got more CO2 in the atmosphere than at any time during that period. And this is changing the climate. You know, I'm not saying Earth won't survive, Earth will survive. But one question is, first of all, will our way of life survive? You're also right when you say we found different substitutes for the energy forms we've been using. We're substituting natural gas for coal. We're starting to use nuclear instead of fossil fuels. We're using wind and solar. Yes, we are making changes, but CO2 concentrations continue to go up. And we know that CO2 is a greenhouse gas. It traps more heat in the atmosphere, and that's causing the temperature to go up. And humans have been around, like you mentioned, for example, civilization, about 6,000 years. During that 6,000 years, humans have lived on a planet where the planetary average temperature has only deviated by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit during that whole 6,000 years. It's only been about a 2 degree, maybe 2.5 degree Fahrenheit deviation in that whole time. So we've prospered and we've configured the world. We've created a world. We've configured it to behave under this climate regime. All the crops we use and where we've located our cities and everything like that. Nobody knows, and that includes me. I don't know exactly what's going to happen to global temperatures, but I do know that CO2 traps heat. And scientists have known that since the early to mid 1800s. It traps heat in the atmosphere and contributes to warming. And I know we're putting a lot more in as we continue to burn fossil fuels. And what it means is, since nobody can predict the future exactly, we don't know exactly what temperatures are going to do, it means we're running a risk. And that's what I would kind of leave you with on that. We're running a risk that the temperatures will soar over the next 100 years to the point where the crops we depend on for food, and we know what they are: wheat, soybeans, corn, all the crops we know and love, the agricultural systems we have. We don't know if those systems can continue to function well at 3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than at the current level. And we do know that at 5 or 6 degrees warmer than the current level, they can't. They can't function. And we've got 8 billion mouths to feed. And so climate catastrophe at the end of this century or early in the next century is a risk that we're running.
I understand about the risk. I'm a true believer that when we look at the future, we can look at a variety of different ways. We have looked at other calamities and we've overcome them. We've, as a group and as a people, have overcome them. And that, I don't dismiss global warming. I think you have given a really good overview that Earth is in trouble with the way the air is going. But I also believe that we have been rising to the occasion and changing some of those things. Do you know that in the Sahara Desert, you know this, in the Sahara Desert, they have used 1.5% and put solar panels in there.
Yes.
I think that is fantastic.
Yes, absolutely.
And that some of the countries have been looking at the icebergs as fresh water so that they can take to their lands and use. And I know many global countries are interested in the environment and spend a lot of time with the environment. So, yeah, I agree with you. I just feel that it's a dire situation, but we as human beings are going to rise to the occasion.
Well, humans are very adaptive and we are very clever species. No question about it. We're very, very clever. And we may be able to. It's just that right now I have to admit that it's unknown. It's unknown whether they will. You're expressing an optimistic attitude, and you may very well be right.
Yeah, well, I guess time will tell. We may not. I may not see it. You may. Sarah may. 70 years. It's hard to believe. I've been on this earth for 70 years, and I've seen gobs and gobs of changes. Hey, we're talking with Dr. Thomas Blaine. Dr. Thomas Blaine is an associate professor with the Ohio State University Extension program. We're going to continue this conversation and see where it leads us. Tom, thank you for talking with us.
My pleasure.